Welcome to another installment of Your Mama's Wildlands. My last video, I tried 3 or 4 or 5 different ways of making fire. So I thought I'd cover normally what I would bring. First thing I would bring is I'd go and pick myself up 4 or 5 lighters, and then I would put one in my pack, one in my pant pocket, one in my coat pocket. It is probably the go-to fire starter, and definitely bring more than one. I usually have a couple backups because even these can get wet and don't work as well. I have a magnesium strip and a flint, which I normally use, but I can't find today. But in the video, I also used my, I forgot the name of this, ferrite rod. But again, if you can find tinder, that puts off some amazing sparks. Again, whether it works wet or not, sometimes you have better luck than others. So this is definitely something I would carry. My least favorite, matches, whether they're there or they're in one of these containers. I have from experience, they either get squashed, broken, wet, no good. Even in a container like this, they will over time get wet, get moist, age, whatever you want to call it. So least favorite is matches. Then I always, because I always try to improve, is find a couple other ways of making fire. One of them is charred cloth and flint. Now I had a old gentleman from out west set me up. It's not flint, but he sent me a couple pieces of chert and some steel. And it's always good to have in your pocket. It really, doesn't wear out. If it gets wet, you can dry it out, it'll work. So, charred cloth. Easiest way to make charred cloth, and I prefer jean material. Grab yourself a container, steel. Cut up jeans without lycra, I find a lot of the new jeans, they have a lot of stretch to them, and it's like wearing pantyhose. Anyway, jean material, jean jackets, anything that's really heavy cotton without any plastics. As pure cotton as you can and as thick as you can. Goes into a tin. Close the tin. Put a tiny hole. Put a tiny hole in the cover. That allows all the vapors and everything else. So more or less what you're doing is you're creating charcoal, but it happens to be out of cotton. Yeah, put it, if you like the stink, you can put it on your stove. I normally throw it into my wood stove. And then you're going to have another dry container without a hole to carry the charred cloth. Now if you're wondering what charred cloth looks like, this is charred cloth. I pre-made some, and I'm going to see whether I can actually get one of these to glow on camera. Again, it's nothing that is as instant as a lighter, but once it does go, it has good heat on it. And takes time, takes practice, takes finding the right edge of your chert or your... So again, you can see how if you don't have the right stuff, this would actually be pretty... Almost had one there. Pretty useless, because the more you strike, the more this falls apart. Alright, let's try this again. There we go. I don't know whether you can see it. We have a glow. And it's slow burning, but it's very hot. And it takes a long time. So once you get one going, now the neat thing about this is you can always make charred cloth as long as you have a fire. So there you go. Yeah, generally if it's not a lighter, my go-to is magnesium, and I can't find a starter. But what I can show you is I happen to have a big hunk of magnesium here, and magnesium is very soft, so if you have one of those old film canisters, you can make yourself stinking hot. You can make yourself some magnesium filings. And you can use this as a backup. And if your lighter runs out of fluid, you can use this, and you'll see it burns bright and hot too. The finer you can get the magnesium, the better it'll burn. So there you go. Number one, matches. Number two is one of these, or the magnesium strip. And then I always like to experiment with other stuff if my pack's not too heavy. And I've also made fire with potassium permanganate. I usually carry some of this around. It can be used for a lot of stuff, as far as it's an antiseptic. So can be used for a lot of stuff. It's an antiseptic, so a weak solution you can clean the wounds. A weaker solution you can sterilize water. You can also, it turns really, really bright purple, so you can use it for signaling in the snow. There's a multitude of uses for this, so it's always in my emergency pack. And you can start a fire with potassium permanganate and glycerin. It's not that reliable. I've had the mixture sit there for 5 minutes before it bursts into flames. So that's the other thing you have to remember. Find a method that you can use right away pretty much, and you don't have to screw around. I mean, out there it's survival, right? So always lots of lighters. Well, that's my portion on starting a fire. Next show will be on trying to find fat wood and on actually starting a fire. So these are the ignition sources. This video will end up being very heavily edited for all the ums and ahs, and as any man, I find it really hard to think and speak at the same time. So, oh, just remembered one more. You don't see it too often anymore, but magnifying glasses, eyeglasses, any light source with sun with magnifying glass, and you can start a fire too. Again, not my go-to. Glass seems to be heavy. Sometimes you have a small magnifying lens in compass, so that's always good to have if you're using compasses. Nowadays, with everybody switching to GPSs, you really don't have that luxury anymore. So never rely on one source of ignition. I always like to at least carry 3. Again, matches being my least favorite. Even the all-weather ones and so forth, the box gets soaked and they're no good anymore. So hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, I'm going to try to make more. I'm going to try to keep them under half an hour. Notice a lot of people didn't watch the full video, so that's fine with me. Yeah, and there's a few other things that are coming up. I've seen a few of these. They're called perimeter alarms, and more or less in the deep woods, if you're afraid of animals, it works off of a shotgun primer. We have a spring, and we have a steel striker which strikes the primer and sets it off. So the idea is you set one of these up on a tree, you put a line around it, around your campsite, the perimeter of your campsite, and if an animal walks through, it sets it off, big bang, hopefully it chases the animal away from your tent and not into your tent. But nothing's ever guaranteed. Alright folks, have fun, talk to you again soon, bye.